Hi everyone, I am back, and this time I have parts. So here is the 10cc cylinder block, which is the pump. Here is the part number right there, Hydrogear 70331. And this is the motor, which is the 21cc cylinder block. And this is the part number, 72159, again from Hydrogear. So these are genuine parts, and then this is the filter, which is part number 51315, again, Hydrogear part. So as I said last time, I had decided to replace just the motor, but after further investigation, as in I slept on it, I decided, what the heck, I don't want to reopen this, so I ordered the motor, the pump rather, the motor, and the filter. And for gasket maker, I have this stuff right here. Hopefully this is still good. And so my next step is to put it together. Basically the pump goes down here, and then the middle section, that's actually what that piece is called, goes on top of it, and it gets bolted down under pressure. And then these bearings right here, as well as the motor, they kind of go in together. So you kind of have to start up here with both of them lined up, and then push them both down and compress the motor a little bit against the bearings, and it should slide right in. Of course, when the middle section goes in, make sure this lines up and doesn't push the relief valve out. These springs are from the old motor. So that's it. I'm putting this back together tonight. Let's see what happens. Okay, step one complete. Basically holding, holding the cylinder block with kind of your fingers on the bottom side here to hold the pins in place. You just slide it down, align the splines, and then it drops in. Once it's down, obviously the pins are not going to come off, and you can feel it, you know, kind of spring up and down a little bit, so everything's lined up, everything is good. That worked out really good. Well, I tried it 3 times. And then finally, again, you put the midsection here, the middle section down. Again, make sure that that pin right there is in place. Okay, so that is the relief valve. So you can see if I move the lever that allows you to move the tractor without the engine being on, that moves out. So that is the bypass. So that's in place. And so now, again, the cylinder, the 21cc block, as well as these bearings, kind of need to slide in together at the same time. So keep everything together like this and slide them down. Let's see. Step 2. All right, so step 2 is done. It took me about 4 tries, but basically what was happening is the edge here of the cylinder of the block was getting hung up on that relief valve. Even though it was all the way in, it was kind of sticking down to it. So you really have to compress it against this and move the bearing together with the block. That way the pins don't come into the hole of the bearing or outside and they snap out, and then you got to start over. So it took me 3 or 4 times. So now the bearing is seated down into that groove there. So this is kind of a U-shaped groove. So that's where it belongs, and this is right there. And I already tried. If I bring this in, it aligns with the splines of the cylinder block. Did a minute ago. So it does go in. Let me try this. All right. There it goes. Boom. Okay, so got to fiddle with it a little bit and make sure that the block is aligned properly right here. See that we did drop a little bit, and that guy went in. Again, keep in mind there is a washer that goes right there, so leave that alone. So now it's time to put this piece back on after the filter goes in. So I'm going to do that next. All right, so actually before the filter, this hat goes on. So just press fit around that O-ring. Make sure the O-ring is nice and lubricated so it doesn't stick. And I know that check valve, there's a check valve that goes right there. So trying to remember the orientation of this thing. Okay, so this hat seems to go in like this. I couldn't really find on a notch or a tooling pin or something like that for alignment, but by looking at my original video, it seemed like this channel here is pretty much oriented in this direction. This is barely almost touching the walls. If I really rotate it, it does touch the walls, so I'm thinking this is the way to go. So check valve is back in place, and now the filter goes there. That's it. I should probably wet it a little bit with oil. I'll put that back. And yeah, that's it. I'm ready to put this guy back in. Last time, while I was waiting for parts, I did clean the gasket area. I'm going to do that again with acetone. Actually, I'm using carburetor cleaner and a clean rag. So I'm going to clean the meeting surfaces and apply some gasket maker and try to close this guy. And of course, don't forget the magnet, which I kind of did, but luckily it was sitting on top of the cover, so easy enough. Cleaned off the magnet and just push it down, and I guess that also holds the bearing in place, so that's cool. So what I decided to do here is put this cover on first. So I still need to clean this guy. I am going to put the gasket maker on, put this cover on, then stand it up on its end and clean that up, gasket maker, and close that cover. So that's what I'm doing. So I actually remembered how to align that little hat there where the filter goes onto. So these two holes right there and right there with the O-rings have to line up with these holes, which is where the bolts go through for that pump or whatever that thing is called. So basically you got to make sure that that is lined up, all the holes are lined up, and those holes are lined up, which are pretty good right now. I moved it just a hair. I think I'm going to move it another hair a little bit to this direction, and I did notice that it dropped in even easier in that once it was aligned. So I might even put in the two bolts and lift the whole thing up and trying to drop it back down. So let's see how that works. So with the two bolts in, you can actually rotate this cover slightly, and of course the bolts and that little hat goes with it. So this is a nice way to just kind of gently adjust it in position. Then I will take the bolts out, take the cover off, push down on the cover, make sure it's seated, make sure it didn't move, and it should be good to go. So that was a good catch there, good tip. All right, so surfaces have been cleaned. That one came out beautiful. Everything's lined up. I put my gasket maker on, which without a nozzle on that tube didn't actually come out beautiful, but never done it. And but you know, it is consistent. There are no gaps in the coverage, so hopefully the squeeze out on the inside won't be an issue, but shouldn't be a problem. So all the holes are gasketed all the way around. I'm gonna go for it. Well, I'm gonna call this a success for now. There is even squeeze out all the way around and even through some of the bolt holes. Basically what I did is I literally gently placed the cover on top, then started and just let it rest on its own weight, and then put all the bolts through, tightened, screwed in by hand as much as I could. Then I put this guy on so that everything would line up properly, and just snugged it up a little bit, not too much, just so that the holes are lined up, and then started gently tightening these guys down by hand in a crisscross pattern, and then going all the way around until basically done by hand. I don't have a torque wrench, so I'm just gonna leave it alone. I can't imagine they need to be too tight, otherwise there wouldn't be any room for the gasket. So what I hadn't thought about is the fact that now this has to dry. So I am going to now flip it up on its end, put this cover on, same process, and then I'm just going to wait overnight. Tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to fill it up with oil and put it in the tractor and cross my fingers. All right, so off to putting this side on. Okay. So quick update, unfortunately, this gear right here doesn't make it through this hole. So basically, I'm gonna have to reverse the operation here, take, should have put the gasket on the other side, I guess, but basically take this whole assembly off right here, down to this gear, I'm thinking, and assemble it onto this guy, and then slide it in. So, yeah, wish me luck. See you in a bit. Okay, so I figured the extent of the assembly here is going to be these parts right here, because there is no way that I can have this gear around that and then align these slots right here as I'm closing this cover. There is just no way. So I'm going to try to leave that gear over there, and unfortunately I cannot flip this over and put it on top of that guy, because all the oil is going to come out and destroy my gasket, which is already drying out probably. So I'm going to try to take this whole assembly somehow. Maybe I'll take this guy, put it back down here. There you go. And somehow lower this. Oh, I think, yeah, I had left that there because that way I could hold these pins in, because these pins do come out. So anyways, maybe with 4 fingers I can kind of hold these guys upside down until it's far into the hole, and then it'll drop in. Yeah, like I said, wish me luck. Well, I finally came to my senses and decided that the only way to do this is to take the shaft out of the housing and put the gears in one at a time. So as you can see there, the little gears there are in. Now I'm going to slide the collar. Goes like that, and then this gear goes right there, and it needs to grab each one of those, so I need both ends. Yeah, no way I could have done this the way I was going at it. So hopefully this gasket is not dried up yet. I fought with it for about 20 minutes or so, but everything is in. Washers are in there, and now I just gotta slide the cover back over it. Well, it seems to be back together. So that was a bonehead move. I'm glad I've managed to figure it out, but I wasted lots of time. So this is a little rubbery at this point. But it did get squeezed out all the way around evenly, so hopefully it's still good. And hopefully I didn't damage the seal up here when I took it out. And before I did, actually, I did file the keyhole right here. So took a file and went across it to make sure that there were no burrs, which there were. So yeah, I'm gonna put the brakes, the brake back on. I believe there was a clip right here. The brake assembly, and just leave it alone overnight. Say a prayer before I go to bed tonight, and then come back at it tomorrow. Hello everyone. Well, it's been 3 weeks, unfortunately, since the last time I was at this. Unfortunately, work seems to be getting in my way of fun. But anyways, as you recall from the last clip that you just saw 30 milliseconds ago, I glued this back together really with the unknown element of the fact that the gasket might have dried up as I was trying to patch it back together. And so what I did do in the meantime, I let it dry for about a week, actually more like 2 weeks. And then I filled it up with oil. And as I mentioned earlier on, I reused the oil that I had just swapped in. That's the old one, and so there is new oil in here essentially. I have not done anything. I mean, I spun this a little bit with a drill. I rotated the shaft. As you recall, also, I was concerned that I might have ruined the seal here. I don't see, so that's been sitting here full of oil for at least a week, and I don't see any leaks anywhere around the gasket. Now, clearly it hasn't come up to pressure, so we'll see what happens when that happens. So the next step is basically put it in the tractor and you know, work out the bubbles, make sure that it's filled by letting it drip out of here a little more. There was a little bit of oil left over in the pan, so I didn't want to put in all the residues that might have been in there. So maybe needs another pint or so, but for the most part it should be good. So I'm gonna actually, you know, one thing that concerns me is this thing doesn't go back. I mean, it goes back and it stays, but I don't know, maybe it needs to come up to pressure the first time around. So that's an unknown. I hope that I put that the bypass in the right position. I'm convinced it was, but I don't know. Beforehand, this used to spring back unless you held this. So that's one area of concern. I'm gonna put it back without this stuff over here, just again so that I can rotate it under the engine power and see if there are any leaks that come out of here. So anyways, without further ado, let me pop it in and see what happens. Well, folks, unfortunately, that is a fail. It seems to have pretty good pressure going in reverse, forward. It got better as I exercised it. I think it probably burped a little bit of air, but it's a no-go. This thing doesn't spring back the way it's supposed to. And so that's a concern. Even if it was working fine pressure-wise and speed and power, I have to resolve this thing, because if I need to move this thing manually when the engine's off, I have to be able to use that feature. There's just no way. Good news is that none of these gaskets leak, but again, it doesn't matter at this point because I have to crack it open. Originally I thought, okay, maybe I can just get into it by the bottom cover here, since I have to access that area. But in order to do that, I'll have to remove the motor part of it, which is connected to the shaft, which is connected to this guy. And to get that shaft out, I have to get this cover off. So it's gonna have to come apart again, unfortunately. This really sucks. I thought about adding some oil and keep burping it, but again, if this thing doesn't work, that's kind of pointless. So back to the bench. I'm gonna conclude this video for now, and it's part 2. This part 2 is getting quite long, so I'm gonna crack it open again and see why this thing doesn't move back the way it's supposed to. I know there are no springs or anything like that. Maybe it fell off, I don't know. I made sure that it was in place, but hey, what the hell do I know? Anyways, that's good for now. That's it for now. Let's see what happens in part 3. Goodbye.